Hey everybody, it's Jordan, JDB Maize on the forums. You may also just know me as Maize. I've been going by Maize for quite a while now, not new to the Dynasty game, but new to this. This is my first video Dynasty series. I'm very excited about it. I have some ideas on how I want to incorporate this into my usual storylines and storytelling in the way I usually build out my Dynasty reports. So very excited about that. I hope you enjoy the video series. And please, any comments or critiques that you can give me on how I can improve this Dynasty series, I'm always open to it and definitely looking forward to it. I am playing Draft Day Sports College Basketball 2021. I cannot say enough good things about this game. I've been really impressed. It's my first time playing one of the college basketball games from Draft Day Sports. That's a Wolverine Studios game. As far as sim-based games go, and I am new to them, it's not something I've been doing for very long, only the last few years. I'm very impressed. I would put it up there with Out of the Park Baseball and Football Manager as being true to the sport that they are trying to recreate. I think they do. I think Wolverine Studios has done a really good job with college basketball. That's not an easy game to try to recreate, especially in this style. And they've done a really good job. I've had a ton of fun with it. And I've been posting my DePaul Waking the Sleeping Demons Dynasty in a few places. So you may have been reading it. You may have been brought over here from Operation Sports. I've been posting on Operation Sports for years. Love the community over there. I'm new to Wolverine Studios, as I said, but I'm posting it there as well. You may also be here from CBGM. So CBGM is, I think, the premier multi-user league that is currently going through a sim of college basketball 2021. I am the manager of Minnesota, Cleveland State, and DePaul over there. Had a good first season with Minnesota, not so much with DePaul. I'm also starting a rebuild there with Cleveland State. My plan in the future is also to bring you some videos on CBGM as well. But this is going to be separate. The Waking the Sleeping Demons Dynasty, I want to continue what I've started on the forums. So let's get into it. So with all my Dynasty reports, I try to mirror what I'm going to simulate with real life. So I did that in the game as much as I could. I renamed and re-rated the entire roster. I wanted the roster to look as much like it's going to look in real life. There are a few things that are different, but that's okay. I'm not bothered by it, but I wanted to give everyone an idea of what DePaul is actually going to look like. I can tell you just from a roster standpoint, the big things that are different. Forward Romeo Weems is declared for the NBA draft. In the game, I have him coming back. It seems he's going to stay in the draft process in real life. Doesn't seem that he's going to be drafted. He's had a couple difficult, inconsistent years at DePaul, but he's still a great athlete, a former Mr. Basketball in the state of Michigan, someone I'm familiar with being from the state of Michigan. That's where Maize comes from, by the way, the Maize and Blue, University of Michigan. I'm a huge fan. So I'm familiar with Romeo Weems. I'm surprised he hasn't taken off offensively at DePaul, and I thought that would be the reason that he would come back, is to show that he can be a team's leading scorer and someone that can be a bucket getter, get his own shot. But it seems he's going to stay in the draft process, so likely won't be on the roster next year. Same for Darius Hall. Darius Hall is a forward that is a grad transfer to Central Arkansas. He's going back home to the state of Arkansas, originally from Little Rock. I have him on the roster here. He's a senior that, a bench player, doesn't get a ton of minutes, really just a reserve role. I kept him on the roster. Again, won't make a big difference between real life and what happens in the game. And the other player is one that it's not completely ruled out yet, but it seems he's going to go elsewhere, and that's center Shawn Robinson. Shawn Robinson is someone that can probably play the 4 and 5. He is originally from the Chicagoland area. He was a 4-star recruit. He played his basketball at the high school level down in Arizona, and then made the decision that he was going to play his college basketball at Ole Miss. After this last year at Ole Miss, he decided he was going to enter the transfer portal. And the transfer portal this year, I don't know if you're following it, if you're a college basketball fan, the transfer portal is on fire. This extra year of eligibility for players, and the fact that players are given a little more leniency by the NCAA because of COVID to move around, use that extra year of eligibility that they have, I think it's going to really change the landscape of college basketball for the next few years. I think there's a chance that you could have a mid-major that has a lot of seniors, took advantage of the transfer portal, builds up kind of a senior-laden roster, and is able to make a real run, taking advantage of one-and-done teams where maybe things don't come together. I think that's a real possibility, because if you look at the transfer portal, it's making a big difference on what college basketball rosters are going to look like. Included in that is that extra year of eligibility. That's true of this roster in DePaul. We brought in some transfers, Shawn Robinson, one of them. He hasn't picked his school yet, so there's a chance it could be DePaul, but it doesn't really seem DePaul is on his radar. So while I have him on the roster, he may not be on the roster in real life. Real life transfers that did choose DePaul and I have in the game: Tyon Grant Foster, the wing from Kansas. He's originally a junior college player that was probably the #1 junior college player when he came out 2 years ago. He chose Kansas, didn't play very much, and is looking for an opportunity to play. It was really that simple, and he's going to get that opportunity at DePaul. He's played sparingly. He's actually going to be a starter for us probably going forward, because I like what I've seen from him on both ends of the floor. The fact that he's a pretty good defender. The offense, it's still coming along. He's a really good shooter at the junior college level. That part hasn't really come to the college basketball level. So I'm still waiting to see that. But again, Grant Foster, really excited to have him on as he is in real life. And the other is Jalen Terry. So Jalen Terry followed his coaching staff from Oregon to DePaul. He is a Flint, Michigan native. I'm actually born and raised just a little south of Flint. Went to school in Flint for a while. Love the city of Flint. And it's a place that has produced a lot of high-end college basketball talent. And I include Jalen Terry in that. Here's a former 4-star guard, chooses Oregon. Doesn't play very much as a freshman, but now as a sophomore with 3 years of eligibility remaining, someone that I think is going to be a catalyst for this offense going forward. Now that Javon Freeman Liberty is dealing with an injury, Jalen Terry, I really want to see him take over. He hasn't yet during this season. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But someone in real life followed the new coaching staff, and I wanted to mirror that, so I've got him on the roster. The big difference in this dynasty between what happened in real life and what's going to happen in this dynasty is the coaching staff. So in real life, Kenny Payne was the #1 with a bullet target when Dwayne Peavy wanted to replace Dave Leto as the head coach at DePaul. Not a very well-kept secret that Kenny Payne was the top target. He's an NBA assistant right now for the New York Knicks. He's done a really nice job there. He's someone that has been credited for player development, especially for bigs, and for being a really good recruiter, an ace recruiter. He was at Oregon under Ernie Kent, and he was at Kentucky under John Calipari. During his time at Kentucky, he also worked with athletic director Dwayne Peavy, who's the new athletic director at DePaul. So they had that relationship from their time together at Kentucky, and I thought it was a slam dunk. So before the new coach of DePaul was announced, I had Kenny Payne in the game, and I started my dynasty, hit the ground running. Brought in a former Kentucky player and Kentucky assistant, Scott Padgett. Kenny Payne worked under Ernie Kent, so I made him the first assistant. I think Ernie Kent's recruiting is going to be very important in the game. And Kenny Payne has been working with Aaron Brooks at the Knicks, so I brought him along for his first full-time coaching gig. Aaron Brooks, of course, recruited to play at Oregon by Ernie Kent and Kenny Payne. So I like that connection. I thought it was a coaching staff that made sense, seemed realistic, but in real life, it turned out a little different. Kenny Payne ultimately turned down the job, decided he wanted to stay in the NBA, and I can't say I blame him. And DePaul decided to turn to Tony Stubblefield. So Tony Stubblefield is the top assistant at Oregon. He's been an ace recruiter, players coach, someone that is really well regarded in coaching circles in college basketball. And he takes over DePaul's program with, I think, a very similar vision of what Kenny Payne would be bringing, where you want to install, a very disciplined basketball culture. You want to go out and win top recruits because talent is going to make the difference. So I think both Kenny Payne and Tony Stubblefield, they're not going to try to win with the X's and O's. They're going to try to win by winning on the recruiting trail, bringing in top talent again to DePaul, trying to win recruiting battles in Chicago and in the Midwest. I'm not afraid to look for battles for top 100 players. Kenny Payne would have done that. Tony Stubblefield is already doing that. He's done a really nice job retaining a roster that was in flux at DePaul. As I said, you're seeing this across the college basketball landscape. A lot of coaching moves this offseason, I think more than a lot of us expected. And because of that, you've got a lot of player movement, and retaining and building a basketball roster for a first-year program. For the first year you're running a program, when you're trying to build everything, and you also now have to worry about a roster and filling out 13 scholarships, I think that's incredibly difficult. And in the game, that's something that I've talked about in my dynasty reports. You can go back and look at how I've had Kenny Payne build this roster. And if you're interested, look at what Tony Stubblefield is doing at DePaul. Very similar in real life. Like I said, this roster looks very similar to what the real life DePaul roster will look like. But Stubblefield's going to have his hands full, just as Kenny Payne's going to in this dynasty. DePaul is a tough rebuild. That's why I call it waking the sleeping demon. This is a program that has been asleep for a long time, and I see them as a sleeping giant. They are in the heart of the city of Chicago. They're in the Lincoln Park neighborhood. They've had great players in the past. They've had great teams in the past, but now they are 17 years removed from the last time they made the NCAA tournament. That has to change. It's a team that has really struggled to find an identity. They've really struggled to find a fan base and keep that fan base engaged because the product on the court just has not been very good. And one of the ways I plan on changing that in my dynasty is through recruiting. So let's look at what this coaching staff has done with their first full recruiting class. So as of right now, we've gone out and we've gotten 3 players, and these are real life recruits. This is something that I'm going to be including in my dynasty. I want the top 50 to 100 recruits. I did it for the 2021-22 season. So the class of 2021, many of the top players are included in this dynasty. I'm hoping there's some one and dones. So guys like Chet Holmgren is in there. I wanted that because I wanted that level of realism. And I did it for DePaul's recruits as well. So as of right now, DePaul has 3 available scholarships, and we filled it with 3 players. 1 a 4-star and a top 100 player in the country, and then 2 3-stars that come from the region that I think are going to be very good players. Again, these are real, actual prospects that I've put in the game, and they're all 3 players that are on DePaul's radar and may end up playing at DePaul in the future. The first is Chisholm Akpara. He plays at La Lumiere, which is Shane Ehrman's old program. That is a powerhouse program in the state of Indiana. And Chisholm Akpara is a player that kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Justice Winslow, Stanley Johnson, one of those kind of like thick built wings that's a good athlete and basically can do everything on the floor for you. Akpara is kind of that player. Very good athlete, plays above the rim, can handle a little bit, and will not get you in trouble defensively. Just a very good, athletic, intense player. I think would make a lot of sense for the type of culture that I want to bring to DePaul. Next up is Braden Huff. Braden Huff is kind of your typical stretch 4 player, a little undersized currently, but he's 6'8", 189, shorter wingspan, not a great defender, very good offensive player. And that part of his game is still developing. In the game, Braden Huff was someone who had a really nice performance at the Chicago Showcase, and is someone that I think could be a nice player for us, a rotation piece. Kokiat and Brandon Huff, I think, will be fighting for maybe starter minutes or heavy rotation minutes next season. I really just see it's going to depend on how Huff comes in. If he's a good enough athlete that he can earn those minutes, because we know he has the skill set, but is the rest of his game going to translate to see him earn minutes? That's really the big question, and why he's not as highly rated of a player nationally. The other player, and the one I'm really excited about, is DJ Jefferson. This is someone that is being, he's currently a 3-star recruit in real life and in the game, but I see that changing. I think he may end up a 4-star in real life. Out of the Minnesota Prep Academy, fantastic shooter, just someone that can really fill it up from deep, has nice range, and is overall just a very good player. Has an all-around game that you don't expect from someone who's that quality of a shooter, because you know that he's just putting in time in the gym, putting up shots, but the rest of his game has come along really well. And I think DJ Jefferson is someone that, if he's looking around right now at some of his options, as he is in real life, DePaul is one that's going to stick out. They have offered him a scholarship in real life, and I think he may end up at DePaul. If he does, DePaul's getting a great player. He's someone I'm really excited about. I think he's a little underrated, where he is ranked 241st in the nation. I think he's better than that. Very excited to get him on campus and see what he can do. So those 3 going to be joining the team next year, taking over those 3 scholarship spots. Very excited about those 3 players. I think it's a good building block, a nice base. And it probably will be in the top half of recruiting classes in the Big East, which is something that I think is going to be a goal of mine. Finish in the top half of the Big East recruiting class every year. So you probably are seeing at the top of your screen, I'm 11 games into the season. DePaul is currently 5-6, 0-2 in the Big East. I left off my dynasty reports after the first Big East game of the year against St. John's. So I want to talk about the second Big East game of the year that DePaul has played against Xavier. And after that, let's look at the schedule kind of overall. And then we'll move into a little preview of the Big East, a preview of how I see the rest of the season going. Just want to continue to give you as strong of a state of the program as I can for this first episode. And then we'll talk about what the videos are going to look like in the future. So with that little rundown, let's go ahead and look at the schedule. So as you can see, and if you've been following along with what I've posted on the forums, strong start to the year, 3-0, but hadn't really played anyone. Our first real test came against Baylor, and we put up a good fight. on the road in Orlando as part of that Advocare Invitational tournament. Played against Baylor, a 4-point loss, but played well. Javon Freeman Liberty, that's his season high, 23 points so far. Second highest point total for anyone on the team so far this year. Marquise Jacobs putting up 28 against South Dakota State. That's our high water mark so far. So we followed up that tough loss 5 days later with just a blowout loss to Vanderbilt. We return home and just got the doors blown off by Vandy. Scottie Pippen Jr. puts up 20. We lose by 20, drops the record to 3-2. But we know coming out of that, we've got a week off and we have some opportunities to get some wins and to finish non-conference play with a winning record. That's what I wanted, because for a lot of coaches, you want to show that proof of concept. It's not that we're playing great teams, but we still want to go out and earn some dubs. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with DePaul's non-conference schedule. Try to build in some wins, see what this team really looks like, give us some competition, but there's no reason to play a murderer's row. We're not expected to be a winning team. We were projected to be the worst team in the Big East. We've started Big East play kind of rough. So no reason to set the non-conference slate against us as well. So when December starts, we get that game against Detroit Mercy, probably our best defensive game of the year, 69-55 win. And from there, we go on to the Missouri State game. The Missouri State game really becomes the turning point of the season. It's a 3-point win, a game that was back and forth against a very good Missouri State team. But we lost Javon Freeman Liberty in that game. And you see, he was the highest scoring player in that game, 14 points in 14 minutes. He gets hurt just before halftime. We end up having to scramble a bit with a rotation in the second half. We hold on to win. Very important because it means we're going to have a winning record through non-conference play. But it also means we're without our best player for 2 months. So we still at this point in the season are a month away from getting JFL back. And you can see without him, we're really struggling. We've lost our last 4. In the rotation, I put Marquise Jacobs in as a starter, and he's a guy that can get buckets. I mean, you're seeing it. He was our leading scorer in 3 of the last 4 since he's been in the starting lineup. Also helping the team by leading in assists in the South Dakota State and St. John's games. I'm happy with the way he's played, but the problem with Marquise Jacobs, smaller point guard and a real detriment on the defensive end. Someone that, I think now I've learned that we've gotten a bit of a sample size here that we can't play Marquise Jacobs for long stretches because teams are really able to bully him on the defensive end. So we don't want to see that continue to happen. So I think Jacobs going forward is going to be someone that we're going to bring in to try to just give us that pop. He's going to be probably going forward our microwave player. Marquise Jacobs, again, someone that I'm excited about because he can fill it up. But I think we now learned how we have to play him because he was a part of a 4-game losing streak. So after a close loss to South Dakota State, and that was really the tale of 2 halves. Let me highlight this game really quick. We have a 21-point lead at halftime, and we threw it away. A 24-point deficit in the second half means we lose by 3 at home. Just a horrendous loss, and a loss where you saw, again, Marquise Jacobs put up a great stat line, 28 points, 3 assists, only 3 turnovers for how often he had the ball in his hands. I mean, his usage rate had to be crazy in that game, especially for how often he was getting to the line. But what's so interesting about this game and what I love about the box scores in college basketball 2021, if you look at the bottom here, we did a really good job of beating them up. 26 points in the paint to 8. So we kept them out of the paint, but they were able to take advantage as the shots started falling. We got ourselves in foul trouble later in the game, and South Dakota State just chiseled away, kept chipping at it. Our largest lead in the second half grew to 25 points. South Dakota State never gave up, ended up winning this game by 3. Their largest lead of the game was only 4. A horrific loss for us. And I think it showed that offensively, we weren't quite sure what to do when we were challenged. And South Dakota State really challenged us in the second half. First half, we were able to do what we wanted, and it just didn't quite work out that way in the second half. So a close loss and a really difficult loss for us to take as it kind of started that 4-game slide. Back to the schedule, you can see how Big East play has started for us. Back-to-back losses against St. John's and Xavier. The St. John's lost 68-74. I'll highlight this one for you as well. So just want to point out, you're probably noticing these are a lot of the actual players that are on St. John's roster. I went through every Big East roster and added and changed 6 to 10 players per team. So at a minimum, 6 of these players are actual players in real life. And at the most, probably 10 players And most of that just kind of depended on how the roster played out. If there were a lot of seniors versus a lot of younger players that are going to be on this team for longer. I wanted to make sure that I included everyone's freshman class. So all of those players are in here. You can see Omar Stanley, a freshman for St. John's, already in as a starter next to Isaiah Moore in the front court, already earning minutes. That's great. St. John's in this game, even with Steph Smith going down injured early in the game. Steph Smith is a transfer from Vermont. Even without him, they're still able to win, find enough offensively, and really took care of business. It's 74-68, a good win for them. And really it was, they got to the free throw line and we did not have an answer for Posh Alexander. Posh Alexander, probably one of the better returning players in the Big East, and he proved it in this game. Again, it was Marquise Jacobs just not really having an answer for how to stop Posh defensively. Marquise Jacobs ended up racking up 5 fouls against Posh, and he really just had his way with him. What's amazing about St. John's in this performance, besides not having Steph Smith, they also only shoot 1 of 12 from 3-point range and still beat us by 6. So it just showed us they were able to kind of beat us up, take advantage of us by driving to the paint. And when we got into foul trouble, very similar to the South Dakota State game, we get into foul trouble late in the game. And when we are facing that type of adversity and now having to maybe rely on the bench a little bit more in spots that they're not used to, we can let the lead slip a bit. And in this game, we did exactly that. St. John's was clearly just a better team at one point. They had a 20-point lead that they opened up on us. We were able to chip into it a little bit at the beginning of the second half after kind of a big run. But St. John's just kind of took it away in the second half. So credit to them. I think St. John's a team, probably a bubble team this year. And it's going to be because of Posh Alexander. He's really the driver of that team and someone that can get 30 on any given night. He's so important to what they do. And also, if they get Steph Smith back healthy, he's going to be a really nice compliment to Posh. And going forward, I think this is a team to definitely watch in the Big East. All right, so let's now talk about the game that I just simulated. Didn't actually post, but you're going to see it here live. The 10-point loss to Xavier, December 28th. It's our last game of the month of December. Drops our record now below 500. We now are 5-6. A 10-point loss to Xavier. Let's look at this one. The big story in this one was Adam Kunkel, the senior, returned to Xavier, and by far, he's their leading returning scorer. He got 21 in this game. Also had 8 rebounds. It's not really a strength of his game, but 3 steals, just kind of beat us in a variety of ways. Jalen Terry and him really went after each other the entire game. Jalen Terry got 17 points. That's his first game over 10 points scored. So nice to see him get into double digits. This is the game I expected from Jalen Terry. The strange thing was Marquise Jacobs got into foul trouble early, didn't play a whole lot of minutes, was able to kind of provide some other things for us, gave 3 assists in his 11 minutes. But after leading the team in scoring in 3 straight games, no points scored, no shots taken by Marquise Jacobs. You'll notice that my bench is going to play quite a heavy amount of minutes because, again, this is a rebuild, and I want to see what we have out of some of these bench players. I want to see if I can find players should be earning more minutes, maybe have role as a future starter. I think this season gives us an opportunity to really play with this roster and see what we have. I think DePaul in real life is going to have to do the exact same thing. This was Grant Foster's first start on the season. I liked what I saw out of him. I'd like, again, to see a little bit more offensively, 0 of 3 from 3-point range. And I need those shots to start falling. I think he does as well to get his confidence up on the offensive end. And that was really the story of the night for the whole team. We shoot 4 of 12 from 3, but 3 of those 4 makes are from Jalen Terry. Romeo Weems hit his only 3 of the game. So kind of an uneven performance for us offensively. And Xavier, being a good defensive team, really locked us down, especially in the second half, only allowing 29 points. Now, while we won the second half, Xavier really took their foot off the gas. They had us up by 15 going into the locker room at halftime. So while we were able to win the second half, they were playing with a lead and clearly were playing with house money. They were feeling pretty good about what they were doing. So they were able to not have to play Dwan Odom at all in the second half, things like that. Cesar Edwards didn't play his usual 30 minutes a game. So they were able to go into the bench a little bit, and we took advantage. But still, it wasn't enough to get back in the game. Xavier this year, I think, is going to be pretty good. They're a team that, they missed the tournament last year, had a really rough season. But this year, I think they have an opportunity to be pretty good. They have Jack Nung, the Iowa transfer. I think he's going to be pretty important to get a big man who can score like that. He didn't do much against us, but has shown throughout this season that, he can get his own that he can get buckets and someone that they can rely on offensively. So after that 10-point loss to Xavier, want to look ahead a little bit. We've got some really tough games coming up against probably some of the best teams in the conference. Likely the 4 best teams in the conference are our next 4 games. On the road to UConn, home for Villanova. That starts the month of January. Then we have the Creighton game, that home game that I just highlighted in my last story on the forums. Definitely one to read. Also gives you a little insight as to what DePaul's home atmosphere is like. They have a really weird student section, do things a little bit differently, even though they have this brand new arena right in downtown Chicago. That's interesting, and I highlighted it with the Creighton game, just a story that I had been playing with and something you might want to check out. So we have the Creighton game, back-to-back home games there, and then on the road to Georgetown. I mean, those are 4 teams that, likely could be ranked. Georgetown currently ranked. Creighton had kind of a rough start in non-conference play. Same with Villanova. They had some really tough games early in the season. A loss to Kentucky. Then they had a 3-game losing streak when Colin Gillespie was out. That's a team that going forward, I think is probably going to win the Big East. So some really good tests. Maybe there's something that if we figure out our rotation, we can come up and bite one of these teams. But I don't think we're quite ready to compete with the top half of the Big East. So what you're looking at now, these are the 18 remaining games on the season. So after this video, the next 3 videos I'm going to give you are going to go through 6 games at a time. We're going to take just even bites right out of this schedule for our next 3 videos. I'm going to be bringing you videos twice a week. So next week, you'll get the first 12 games, and then the final 6 games to end the year will be the following week. So 6 games at a time. That's kind of the pace that I plan on having. And then from there, we have the Big East tournament as well as the NCAA tournament. And just to reiterate, I put a real emphasis on the Big East. I've tried to recreate what the Big East is going to look like this upcoming season by including all the transfer players, the incoming freshmen, and some of the best returning players. So each roster has been changed to look like how they're going to look next season. And you see that already they're kind of falling the way I would expect. I would have expected Villanova to have a better record, but they just had a really rough time in Big East play. But other than that, this is about how I would expect it to stack up. You have some teams that are favorites to make the tournament: UConn, Villanova, and Georgetown. Then you've got this whole group of teams in the middle that are probably fighting to get onto the bubble. They're probably going to beat up on each other this year, and it may end up hurting the conference overall. This may only be a 3 or 4 bid conference, but the quality of the middle of the Big East this year is pretty high. And that makes it tough for DePaul, but I think it also is a good challenge for us as we're figuring out this roster to see how we stack up against this conference when it's at its best. All right, to end this video, I want to go through the next few days, get us up to Monday, January the 2nd of 2022. That'll be our next game, Big Monday in the Big East. We'll be taking on UConn. As I said, that will be the beginning of our next video when I'll be going through the next 6 games, but we got to get there first. So let's go ahead and sim through the next few days, highlighting what we're going to see in the Big East to end 2021. I mean, what really makes this game special is the fact that all 357 Division I teams are in here. The mod for this that brings all of those Division I teams in, it's really well done. It includes the coaches, includes stats and history of each program. Just incredible. It really makes this special. So being able to take it the extra step and kind of create a realistic roster, being able to fully edit the rosters like that is awesome. And for me, it adds a level of depth that has really taken this to the next level for me, just what this experience has been like. So now we've got 5 games in the Big East. Let's go ahead and sim through those. Some good matchups here. That Xavier Creighton game, I think, is going to be interesting. Tough game on the road for Georgetown against Seton Hall. Seton Hall very good this year. Big win potential for Providence hosting Villanova. That's a tough matchup for Villanova. Providence is good. They've had a tough start to the year, but that's a really good team. Let's see how it turns out. All right, so let's go back a day and look at those results out of the Big East, last day of Big East games for the year 2021. Right off the bat, good win for Butler. A little upset over UConn. I know UConn was just starting to get some consideration in the top 25, 88-81 win for the Bulldogs. And good news for Villanova, also thinking about the top 25, an 85-61 win over Providence. Crushed Providence. That's a real tough loss for them. A very nice win as well for the Red Storm of St. John's, 86-77 in overtime. This is going to be an issue with Marquette. I think they still lack a go-to scorer. Who do they turn to when the game gets close? You can probably say the same thing about Xavier. Very good defensive team, but probably doesn't have the offensive firepower when they're playing good teams like Creighton. Creighton, a good win, 72-67. And finally, Georgetown just keeps rolling, 92-73 over Seton Hall. I thought Seton Hall would put up more of a fight in that game, but a really nice performance by the Hoyas. Looking at some of the top performers on this day of games in the Big East, Jalen Gaffney leading the conference in scoring, 29 points. A pair of 26-point performances in the backcourt for St. John's in that overtime game, 26 apiece for Posh Alexander and Greg Williams Jr. Very nice there. RJ Cole, 8 assists for UConn in a losing effort. And leading the way in rebounds, Ike Obiagu of Seton Hall and Nate Watson of Providence, 11 apiece. Solid games there. And now we can look forward to the games on Big Monday in the Big East, January 2nd. I'll be taking on UConn. It's a tough road game, especially with UConn coming off that loss. I'm sure they're going to want to get back to their winning ways, but a good chance for us to get to 500. So that's a big one. Villanova, as I mentioned, sneaking into the top 25, now 23rd overall, 9-5 on the year, a good start in the Big East, 3-0. That's important. Big games in the Big East, but I just mentioned the top 25. Let's go ahead and take a quick look. So some surprises up top, starting with Maryland, best team in the country, 12-0. You have 3 undefeated teams, including the Terps, in the top 5, Oklahoma and Kansas, the others. A really good year. It looks like it's shaping up for the Big 12. Top heavy year, having Kansas, Texas, and Oklahoma. Also Texas Tech in the top 25. So it should be fun, along with Press Virginia in the top 10 in the media poll. So clearly the Big 12 having a special season. We'll look through more of the top 25 in the future, along with the Norton Watch, getting an idea of what some of the best players are. But as you can see, we've got some blue bloods playing really well. Gonzaga, 10-3. Kentucky, 10-4 and ranked. Florida and Duke shortly behind both of those teams. A really good start to the year for Wichita State, 12-2. And my Michigan Wolverines, 24th in the country in both the media and coaches poll. A Fab Five of freshmen came into Michigan in the class of 21. Not sure if you've ever heard that term thrown around with Michigan before, but the Wolverines, a good start to the year, led by Hunter Dickinson, Caleb Houston, the freshman, Eli Brooks, and Brandon Johns. Brandon Johns in the sim is like playing out of his mind. I'm not sure if that'll continue, but something to keep an eye on as we look nationally. But going back to the Big East, this is where I leave you, and this is where I will be picking up for the next episode. Episode 2 will take us through 6 games of the Big East schedule for DePaul, 5 and 6, as we try to stay competitive in our first year under head coach Kenny Payne. This has been Waking the Sleeping Demons, episode 1 of season 1. Hope you enjoyed. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Hit that bell so you're the first to know when new episodes are up. And please leave a comment below letting me know what you think of the first video. Also, comments in the forum are helpful as well, just so I can get some feedback on what you think of this video series and also what you may want to see. I can definitely highlight teams if there's certain things you're looking for, certain teams that you're interested in. I can do that for you as well. So appreciate it, everyone. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.